This brief video summarizes the country profile for Slovakia as prepared by the Slovakian partner in the regional comparative analysis of regional policies for adult learning, a project completed over the periods 2014-2015 in 16 regions across 6 European countries. This project was supported by the European Lifelong Learning Programme.
Good morning, my name is Marta Jendekova and I'm going to present Slovakia's country profile that was prepared on behalf of AI Nova as a partner institute in the regional project. So let me first show the basic information on the two regions that were researched. That was the region around Bratislava and the region around Prešov, which together present the western region and the eastern region in Slovakia. We have 4 regions on this level of NUTS 3, and that was the two that we chose because they are really different in terms of GDP, in terms of their definition with structural funds, levels of employment and unemployment and participation in lifelong learning. The only thing that is comparable more or less is the population, but really all the others represented two different poles of wealth and everything in Slovakia. And we planned the research so that we started with the regional level, but there we realized that really we have to research the national level as well. So we conducted 2 interviews at the regional level, 1 person from each region, and then we turned to the national level where we went to see the representatives of 3 main agencies relevant for the lifelong learning in our case, or which includes the adult learning. We always interviewed non-elected policymakers. And of course we conducted also the primary research, the desk research, where we found also some policy documents which were bordering on the dates, because as I think everybody found out that the policy documents tend to be long-term, and most of those which we needed for our research were also produced before 2011 or just in 2011. Okay, with regard to the policy formulation, we came to the conclusion, which is one of the most important things for our profile, that the AL policy is formulated at the national level. So all the main strategies, all the legislative framework is done at the national level. At the regional levels, there are some partial strategies included mainly in the planning documents, in the strategic documents for economic and social development of the regions. So not really any special AL policy document is produced on the level of the regions. Even though there is the overlap between the vocational education and training and AL in the minds of the people, because as was found out also in other countries, very much of the policy formulation in Slovakia is driven by the economic reasons. So really to produce people who fit to the labor market needs. What was interesting also with regard to, let's say, planning, etc., that also many things are driven by the availability of the structural funds and also by the expectations or obligations arising from the EU contacts. So a lot of planning is done because it is expected by the EU documents, etc., and the EU structures. So a lot of the national level initiatives are found in the strategic reform programs of the country. I was going to the next slide. Okay. And so the same thing is for the implementation. I mean, everything that is somehow driven comes from the national level. The regional levels are mainly interested in helping the secondary schools, for example, in cooperation with employers and associations of industries, etc., in finding the common way of planning the future education, but in the formal system. So out of that, one of the tasks for the future that is also recognized by the ministry and the country is how to acknowledge, how to recognize the results of non-formal and informal training at basically each levels. At the national level, what is or what could be included under the policy implementation are three big national projects funded through the EU. One is called the further education and guidance for adults as a tool of better employability on the labor market. So again, economy driven. But an interesting issue is there that it's not only about learning, but also about counseling and guidance. So a lot emphasis is put on career guidance and establishing career guidance centers, but for only the employed people, not for unemployed. So the employed people can plan their career to better suit the needs of the labor market. Another two projects are linked to setting up a good scheme or system of national qualifications and national professions, so that all of these are well described and well defined, and then the training can reflect the needs of these. So the prognosing should become in the future really a good way of then regulating the offer of training. With regard to the funding, as was already said for other countries, main problem is defined as insufficient funding and absence of a real system for funding of adult learning. The main source of any funding that exists right now through the project is the EU funds. And as in other countries, it appears that PPPs are not felt as a solution, because it is not a usual practice and there are no guidance set. Some of these problems should be solved through a newly prepared law on lifelong learning, and one of the things which should be there reflected is a setting up of an education fund which would be financed from the employers. And the labor code will probably introduce an obligation for employers to enable employees to follow certain courses and trainings. That will be one of the things to solve the financing. And to put some key findings together. So at the national level, there is a basic framework. There is basic legislative framework, there is a strategy of lifelong learning, but there is no systemic approach to monitoring, to evaluation and to implementation. So the policy cycle is not closed, so to say. So there is the beginning of it, but not the other steps. As I said, the situation should change, because right now really a new law is being established, which will also be a sort of a case study for us to follow all the steps at the national level, whether there are consultations, whether the people are invited to give opinions, and how will the implementation and funding be set up. The first steps are done in cooperation with more stakeholders, so it seems that really it will be taken into consideration from more sides. At the regional level, there are different training institutions, of course, which provide certain courses, but there is no systemic way of monitoring them or using their services. And the main drivers of the policy formulation are the EU funds and are the EU documents and the expectations from the EU. What the interviewees identified as helpful things would be the examples, the best practices, and also better data, better surveys available specifically for regional levels that could help to formulate the policy. So I think this completes my short presentation. Thank you.
Regional, a comparative analysis of regional policies for adult learning, supported by the European Lifelong Learning Programme.